Okay, hello. My name is George. I'm a mentor on the GADS program for 2020. Um, we are currently in the project phase for each of the tracks, and I'll be sharing this short video with us, showing us how to go about carrying out our project tasks. Okay, first of all, this is the document for Phase 2 project. We need to scroll down to where we have the labs. Okay, you need to select a lab that is easy. You can easily translate that to code. You don't need to do anything very complicated. Okay, so in this case, I'll be looking at, let me zoom in. I'll be looking at GCP fundamentals getting started with Compute Engine. Okay, so I'm thinking that would be just to create a Compute Engine instance and do some things on it. Okay, so first of all, let's go to Phase 1 main track. So we need to actually identify the labs in our dashboard. Don't click this link. If you do, this link is connected to whoever provided these links and will only work for their own browsers or in their own sessions using their own credentials. So you actually need to click it from your own dashboard so that it opens up using your own credentials. So first of all, open your dashboard, go to Home, go to Channels, and look through the channels. You see Associated Cloud Engineer Learning Phase 1 main track. We'll click on that one. Okay, so that opens, and we are told the course is Google Cloud Platform Fundamentals Core Infrastructure. Let's check that out. Okay, so that's the course, and that's what is here. Okay, so we'll click into that, and then the module is, oh, sorry about that. The module is Getting Started with Google Cloud Platform. So let's look for that model, Getting Started with Google Cloud Platform. There it is. So click on that, a new tab window should open up. Okay, give it a few minutes to load. Okay, of course, when it loads, it wants to play immediately. That is if you have your autoplay enabled. Now we are in there in that module. Let's find out in that module what course, what particular in that module, sorry, what particular lab should we be taking care of? Okay, so let's look through that module. Let's go back here. This is the first lab. You can tell from this, we'll call it an icon or something that's at the side of it. This is a lab. So let's just put our cursor on it, and it says Getting Started with Cloud Marketplace. No, that's what we after. Click the next module and go down. Not the next, the next module, if I will call it that. Go down, and then you have this one. So that says GCP Fundamentals Getting Started with Google, Getting Started with Compute Engine. Let's go back there. Okay, so Fundamentals Getting Started with Compute Engine. So that's what we want. Go back here, and here we are, and then let's click that, and it comes up. Right click here and open in a new browser window. All right, so click in there, select this, and click in there to sign in. We are not going to be doing the labs. We're simply looking through the steps and see what we're supposed to do. Okay, this lab has to do with Google Cloud Fundamentals Getting Started with Compute Engine. What is the objective? What are the objectives of this lab? We'll be creating a Compute Engine using a console. We'll be creating another Compute Engine using the web interface. And then, of course, we'll connect the two instances. Now, in the second instance, we'll be using web interface. This one will be there, command line interface, sorry. So in this case, the commands will be written out for you, but in this instance, the commands will not be written out for you. So you need to translate this one into commands that I can run or any other person can run. And of course, this one is there, so you just simply copy it and copy the commands and then make some edits if you need to. And then the last one, of course, this you will need to show how that can be done using your commands. Okay, I've already done this previously, so it's very important you present this properly. I'm using Markdown to do the my text is in Markdown format. You could use a TXT text document. I'm using Markdown. Okay. All right. All right, so I'm having issues with my encoding. I hope that doesn't worry my video. Okay, so let's look at the first thing we need to do, which is task 1, sign into Google Cloud Platform. Of course, this basically will be you setting up your Google Cloud SDK. So we don't really need to do this. Okay, need to translate that. Then, of course, create a virtual machine using GCP console. Okay, let me show you the document I made. Okay, first of all, let me put this in presentation mode. So it's a bit clear, although I would have loved it to be more zoomed in, but it's not happening. And I don't know how to do that on this editor. Okay, so first of all, the lab is actually, this will tell us which lab I am going to work with. Okay, so if I look here, the lab is this one here. So I have stated that in my documentation. Of course, the next thing is the objectives of the lab, to tell whoever is working with the lab, this is what we expect to get done at the end of the day. So these objectives have simply been copied over, and of course we have them all here. Okay, all right. Now the next one comes in, that's the steps. And of course, because I'm using Markdown, I use the hash tags here to actually present it as a H1 heading, H2, H3, as the case may be. Okay, so the first one says create a compute engine virtual machine using the console. Okay, so normally we would have done this in our console, web console, but we're doing this in lines of code. So let's go to that task and see. Let's quickly analyze the steps so that we can put them down in documentation. Okay, we're going to create a virtual machine, and any region is fine. The default region is okay. You can take any region you want. Machine type, accept the defaults. Usually the default, I think, is N1 standard 1, and then the default image is usually a Debian machine, but they said if it's not, then change that to Debian 9 with the code name stretch. Okay, leave every other thing as the default, and then for firewall, click allow HTTP traffic. Now, I didn't actually do this one. I did this, but you need to understand that when you click this or select this while creating an instance in the console, it also creates a firewall rule in the background to allow access to this instance. So basically what that does when you select it is, let me zoom this in, zoom in a bit. What this does when you select this in your console is that it tags the instance with the tag name HTTP, and then it creates a firewall rule targeting that any instance that has that tag. So I would actually do this one in this case. When we're doing it, you'll see me type it out. I'll add it to the one I've already done. Okay, so we're supposed to take the whole of this from, let's say from step 3 all the way to step 10 and write it out in code. Let's look at how that translates to when we do that in code. Let's look carefully. Okay, so now the first stage or the first step is G-Cloud Compute Instances creates my VM, my -VM-1, machine type N1 standard, image project Debian, image Debian 9 stretch, and of course the version. Of course, you can look at your, if you don't know how to get this one, I simply took this from the second part of the third part of the command or the lab, which has to do with creating it in the command line. But you can check that out in your console if you have the SDK installed. If you don't, no, the default as the time of producing this video is that even if you don't state these parts of the command, it will create a machine of this type using this image project, referencing this project image, and then use this image and of course the latest version, and then use the default VPC. So if you actually have several other VPCs and you want in the same project, you would need to tell it which of the VPCs you would want to use. In this case, it's default, but this one will have to be stated because there we are told to select the option to allow HTTP traffic. So we'll be doing that. We need to add this tag to our command line to get it to work. Okay. All right. So now we've done this. It doesn't end there, because in the real sense, when this is done behind the scene in the console, when you select that option, when you try to create an instance in the web UI, it will tag that instance, like I said earlier, and also create a firewall rule. So let's create a firewall rule. Compute firewall rules, create, call it any name. I could just call it allow allow HTTP, and then the rule will be less the long part action. Action will be allow, okay, and then destination will be ingress, okay, and rules would be HTTP port 80, and target tags would be what tag did we call it? HTTP. Okay, so those two rules, the first one will create a VM with the name my VM1 as seen in the lab, and use these configurations for the image, the VPC, and then we will tag it, because in the instructions we are supposed to select the option to allow HTTP traffic. So when this is selected, like I've said, what actually goes on is that instance is tagged, and then firewall rule is created, and that firewall rule will now permit traffic into that instance. So we have tagged it here, and then we need to create this firewall rule, else this won't really have any meaning. So this firewall rule will allow access, internet HTTP traffic into this instance, of course, because it has this tag. And of course, if you wish to have that same firewall rule affect any other instance you create, then you simply just tag them HTTP and it will apply to them. Okay, so what's the next thing? Let's go back to our instruction. So that when that is done, of course, we're supposed to click here if we're actually running the labs. We're not. And then the next thing is to create a virtual machine using the command line. So this is practically copy and paste. So the first thing they did here was to list out the regions, the zones, sorry. Okay, the zones. This is a Linux command that actually spits out the list of zones using this gcloud command, and then pipes the output using this pipe character into the grep tool on Linux. And then you will now use this grep tool to filter the output of a previous command. And then we are searching for our results that have this US-central1 in the output. So when you do that, it will list out all the zones that are associated with the US-central1 region. Then from there, we say choose a zone from the list other than the zone to which QuickLabs assigned you. So QuickLabs will assign zone 1A in US Central, but in this case, we will pick anything other than A. We have A, B, C, and I think D. So in this case, from down here, you see they picked B. So after listing this one out, I didn't actually include this one. So you could also include it, but you need to state why this command is included. You could simply say, choose a zone from the output of this zone and use the grep command to filter the results to list the zones associated with the US Central 1 region. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is to set the zone, the default zone, to US Central 1B. This is the command to do that. Of course, this is also stated here. That is the second part. Okay, so we set this here and then simply copy this command here. Okay, copy it and paste it, and of course remove the slashes, because that in Linux tells the terminal that that command has not ended on this line. Okay, has not ended on this line and should move to the next line to continue, looking for the variables and options to use and run the command. So when I do that in my own editor, I don't need to put that. I could also put that if I wanted to, but I remove them and simply place them on one line. Makes it a bit more readable for others. So when that is done, the first step will create a VM called my VM1. The second set of commands will create a second VM called my VM2. Okay, so when that is done, of course, we exit from the shell if we're using a shell, but in this case, we are not exiting anything. Our shell will remain open. So you don't need to include this command. Okay, all right, so now we connect between the VM instances. That is the third step we need to do. Okay, so first thing first, we use the ping command to confirm that my VM2 can reach VM1 over the network. First of all, for you to be able to ping VM1 from 2, you need to connect to 2, and then from 2 you ping. So we are going to do what? We are going to use the gcloud command SSH into the second VM we created. Okay, once we are in there, now look through, you will see that there is no mention, and all they did was tell us, let's see how we connect to. It says to open a command prompt on VM2 instance, click SSH. So this SSH is done in the console, but in our own case, we will use a command terminal to do that. So this is that interpretation or translation of that SSH line into code. So we do gcloud compute SSH my dash VM2, and once we're in there, we will now run the ping command, pass in the C option, and then hit this other VM. And of course, that C says we should ping it 4 times. So we're going to send out, we only, we will do the pings 4 times, get return of 4. After the 4th one, we will now exit the ping command. Now that is done, that is this line. The next thing they asked us to do, of course, is to do Control-C to abort the ping. Because we passed in the C option in the ping command, we don't need to do that anymore, because it will automatically stop the ping at the 4th trial, because we passed in -C4. Okay, the next thing we need to do, we need to SSH into this one. Now remember, we have already SSH'd into VM2. So from VM2, we need to run SSH command to get into VM1. Now let's look at how it's done, simply the way it is in the labs page. We don't need to use gcloud. We simply do SSH and then the name of the VM we want to change our SSH into, and that is done. Now what's the next thing we're supposed to do? While we are in there, we will run this command to update and then install the Nginx server on VM1. So we simply just, as I've seen here, do this. That's the first one. Then we use the nano editor to modify the default index page for the Nginx server. So that was also included in my command. That is simply sudo nano var forward slash var path, practically path to where you have that index file. On Linux, this is where it's stored. On Windows, it will be different. You need to find out, for Windows users, you need to find out where that one is. Now, add this line to this document. Look for H1 tag and replace that. Add text like this and replace your name with your name placeholder, this, with your name. My own is George, so I would have done this. I would have removed this and put in George there. Okay, all right, and then of course exit. And let's look again. I think yes. So they said move the cursor to the line just below the H1 header and add this text. So let's put this there so that people are aware what they're expected to do. So let's put that one there, and then add. So that tells us what we do. We move with our arrow keys when we've opened that file with a nano text editor. On Windows, you could be using something like any simple text editor on Windows. Use that to carry out that command. Okay, so this is a Linux set. Okay, so we add this and then we exit. Of course, how to exit that, you should know how to do that. And of course, I didn't include that step, so you do that, find that out. If you want to include it, no problem. Okay, so after that, we are now back in VM1. We will now run the curl command on localhost. You only do that when you're calling the default index file from your current server. So while in there, we will run this command, and of course when we're through, we will do exit to get out of server 1 or instance 1 and go back to instance 2. So that is included in my set of codes. This and the result, the response will be HTML source of the web server's homepage, including your line of custom text. So we should actually see the text we added. You should actually see that when we run that curl command. Then of course we do type exit to get out of VM1 and go back to VM2. Then while in VM2, we now run a curl command. Now in this case, we no more use localhost, but we actually use the name of that instance. Now, because they are in the same zone, it's possible to use the name you assign to them when we're creating them to actually interact with them. So that's the next thing we're supposed to do there. Okay, when the response again, I didn't add that response. Let me do that here. That will tell whoever this is the result you should see, and it makes it easy. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let me just bring this one back here a bit. It doesn't need to be. I'll put this one here. Let's go back there. So the response should be this. Okay, let's copy that and paste that in. Okay, so your skill and ability to document your steps, your processes is important. So you need to take your time so that anyone who reads your documents can replicate the listed objectives and get the same results as you have got, or you should have got. Okay, so what's the next thing we're supposed to do? Copy the external IP of VM1. Of course, how do you do that from the terminal? First of all, you need to list out the instances. When you run this command, it will list out instances. And of course, this instance is in US zone, central zone, 1B. That's important. If you don't, it will be confused. Of course, it will ask you. So since I know I'm targeting, zone A. Since I know I'm targeting an instance in zone A, I pass in the zone option. Okay, when I do that, it goes to zone A and list out the instances there. And of course, I will copy the external IP for that instance and then paste the IP copied into a new tab in my web browser and hit the return key. And of course, the server's homepage, including my default text, should be presented to me. Okay, Okay, so practically, basically, that is how you translate this lab into code and then save this file. In my case, I use a markdown file. Markdown file is a file that has the extension of .md. You could use a simple txt file. On Windows, I would think it's the same md, it's the same .md and .txt. And then, of course, your repo is created. Put that in your repo. So this would be the first translation you've done. Go back to your documents and of course pick out something simple, something straightforward and simple. It doesn't have to be something so great. Okay, so once you're through with this, you could also just quickly run this lab. Click on start button here and run this lab and carry out the same things. And of course, when you're done, you will receive a mail similar to this. Now note here, we will need to see the dates, because as a confirmation, we're still looking at if that is a requirement that we do currently redo it or whichever. Then you need to take a screenshot that shows us all of this, including the dates, and of course, and it has to be 100%. 50% won't work, 20% will work, 100% will be the case, and then that will be part of your submission for labs carried out. And the other one, the one we did in our editor here, will be submission for translation done. So basically, that's just as simple as it gets. I wish you luck. Take your time, collaborate with your peers, and of course, our mentors. We are here to help and answer your question. Thank you for watching, and leave your likes. Bye-bye.